Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 10 of the Broadcast Club. I am Ange Time.
I'm Rallina Tricolor.
And I am Nakanashi.
Our topic today is piracy in the visual novel community, and our guest to talk about it is no one. We figured, piracy is kind of a sensitive topic, so hey, stop laughing.
It sounded so enthusiastic.
Yeah, you were like so ready to introduce somebody, and you're like,
no one.
I had to make
Yeah,
it. I had to make it stand out, but whatever. Anyways, so let's see. I'll just pretend like I said.
Oh no, this is all staying in the live cut. This is all.
Oh yeah,
staying
this
in
is
the
all
live
stayed in. Don't worry. No. Let's pretend.
yeah,
Let's
totally.
go. Everyone's gonna be
Eh,
like, what are they doing right now? It's fine.
Okay, whatever. Anyways, let's just get right into it. So, the first topic I wanted to talk about is, just get right into it. Like piracy, visual novels. Like when and if should people like ever, pirate visual novels? What do you guys think?
I mean, I think most people that I talk to's general answer is no, you should never actually pirate anything. It's something that there was a large crew of people who put a lot of time and effort into creating, and you should do something to support them, like buying it. But as I kind of one of my life rules that I follow is that there is an exception to every rule, and so there are times that a lot of people would say, yeah, you can pirate something in this case. There's several older VNs actually that you just can't really get anymore easily, or you can get them, but it's like the one that comes to mind most for me is Ever 17, which had an official English localization. The company that did the localization is out of business now. And there's not actually a way to obtain that localization with that directly supports the developers. You can find it, like you can see used copies of it like on eBay or some other sites going for hundreds of dollars sometimes, which I've seen those before. I was like, wow.
I checked today out of curiosity and saw one on Amazon for $500. I was like, oh,
That
well.
doesn't surprise me. Last time I looked, I saw one that was available for, I think it was like $200 or $300. Only had the first 2 discs, and it was a 4-disc thing.
Oh, okay.
It was actually amazing. Like I was like, wow, and I bet someone bought it too, because it's really rare. It's a really rare thing these days. Because like I want to say, when did that come out? It was early 2000s, I think. And it only had like a short run of print, so you can't get it in English anymore. And there is a Japanese download version of it, but there's no patch because it had an official release, so it's not something that had a patch. So it's like,
Yeah, it came out. It came out in 2005, like way before like a lot of companies actually, the big craze of actually localizing visual novels. So it was one of the actual first that existed in the English market.
Yeah, I mean, I think those kinds of VNs are. I mean, I would consider those kind of the freebies for these arguments. Like this is an easy thing to talk about. It's like, well, if there's no way for me to support the company or to purchase this thing in a way that you can get your hands on it, then I think the argument becomes a lot less strong for purchasing it rather than obtaining it through other means, just because the barriers for you getting it are ridiculous, and you're not actually helping out the developers or the creators at all for this. I think the more interesting topics we gotta get into is I think the gray area that a much larger set of VNs exist in, the ones that don't have official localizations but are available, like theoretically that you could import or somehow get a copy of, but there's no way to buy it in English, for example. Thing is, like, I was looking at JList today, which is a website where you can import Japanese physical goods. Just out of curiosity, some VNs in there. So the Magikoi series was coming in at $130 per entry, which, I mean, if you want to read, so then Magikoi S, and Magikoi A, you're looking at about $400 there.
Is that the same price for each of the A releases,
I think all five.
or is it like a
A,
package of all
yeah, I
five?
think it was the package of all five grouped into one for
Okay,
that
yeah,
much.
wow, that would
So
be
That would make
a lot
sense.
that
of
would be
money on
absurd.
Magicoi.
So I mean, $400 for 3 VNs is still absurd, but yeah, that would have been another level. So I
Mhm.
mean, in that case, for example, it's like, well, you are buying a physical copy that was of the VN. You can get your hands on it. It's imported. It's not just like some sketchy person reselling it on eBay. Like it's a company that is purchasing it in Japan and reselling it, importing it. Um, but the markup is just so high that when you look at, well, I could spend $130 to buy a physical copy of Magicoi and then apply an unofficial translation patch to it, or I could choose to get my hands on an illicit digital copy.
Mhm. Yeah, and Magikoi is at one of those points where it was still well, actually, I think there are download editions of some of the Magikoi games.
Are they really interesting? I mean, I
I
don't know
I
that I
think
looked
I
thoroughly
saw
enough to
one.
really
I
discount
was
that
I
existing, but
was I was looking through one of the sites a couple months ago, and I swear I saw a digital copy of one of the A's at least.
which is, I think, another
Um,
point about the accessibility is, man, it is hard to find these VNs if you really want to go buy them, right? Like knowing where to
mhm.
look to find this stuff gets very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, there's guides on
Yeah,
art visual novels, and people will just whip out like, here's this link to if you want to search if they exist. But the average person would be like, where the
Yeah, Automod comments on it. The fact that you need a guide on how to purchase something is silly to me. Like I think that just shows like part of why why piracy gets so prevalent is that
Mhm.
if you need a guide on how to find and purchase a visual novel, maybe there's something wrong with the way that the industry is working.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's like if you want to go out and buy these officially, obtain them 100% legally, all that good stuff. If you are, most of that requires some cursory Japanese
Yeah.
knowledge to navigate the sites. And if you know some of that already, then you can get around a bit. That doesn't address the money issue at all. But for your casual person who is part of the English reading community probably doesn't know much Japanese, if any, like other than what they've casually picked up that may or may not be completely correct from hearing voice acting. Um, they don't know enough to get around these sites. They just don't know what to do. And so when you consider like, well, I have to get a guide and I have to look at this and then I have to click on this button that means something, it ends up being for them, it's like, well, I could do all of that, or I could get it some other way.
I thought you were
And
gonna finish that. I was really waiting there in suspense. Like
yeah, me too.
what's coming after that? Sorry,
I'm glad
continue.
that I left you hanging there because I was actually just going to stop
Oh,
and just let the silence happen for a while, but I decided I should probably keep talking. And there's the silence.
Yeah, there's the silence. Okay, I did have something to say, but I really wanted
Yeah.
to let that silence kind of linger, just to really get you. Listen, you wanted it. I felt I need to make sure you have it,
Good, good. I'm
because
glad you didn't step on my toes there.
I think there's other cases like this as well. Because you get into some weird stuff too, even if it's not, even if it's something not something where importing it is hard. You have these edge cases that are very close to my heart, which are the Higurashi and Umineko releases,
Mhm.
where for Umineko you used to be able to get your hands on it legally. And I remember I think the Witch Hunt website actually had a link to where you could purchase the game. However,
Well, for a while, I think
yeah.
it was Manga Gamer was
yeah,
hosting the Japanese versions, and the Witch Hunt is like, you can buy from Manga
yes, you
Gamer
buy
and then
from Manga
apply our
Gamer and
patch,
then
and
apply your
everything's
patch.
great.
And then they
Yeah.
decided to put out an official release, and
hmm
they took it down from Manga Gamer, and then there was just this huge void for Umineko. So, for
hmm
example, when I wanted to read it 2 years ago, um, and was first reading it, I don't believe that any of the Umineko chapters were available for purchase anywhere, because the only person that had the rights to distribute them, unless I wanted to import a physical copy, was had taken it off the market to
hmm
retranslate, and now now it's I
Yeah.
think it's still on Manga Gamer, right? I think. Um, but also on
It
Steam.
is.
And so for when I wrote Mineko, I was like, well, I've been wanting to read this for a while, been planning to read this, and just turns out that there's no way on the internet for me to buy this. I ended up pirating it, and then kind of was disappointed because like I would have given them money for it. And in fact, after the fact, now that it's on Steam, I do own both the question and answer arcs because I was like, this is a good VN. I felt bad about having to do that because I wanted to actually give them money. So I went back and actually purchased it. But it's just such a the number of hoops you have to jump through to get your hands on a VN in most cases just ends up being ridiculous.
Yeah, and there are options. Like I say, like there are some download editions of some of these things, but it's been a more recent thing for a lot of games. Having a download edition available. And a site like DL Site has an English version of it that you can navigate around. You can buy things through an English portal, so you don't have that issue of I don't know how to navigate this. But again, it's not everything's on there, and some of the biggest things that people read and people have really loved, like oh I don't know, Fate Stay Night, not on there, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like Type Moon just has no interest in localizing
They don't really.
They've realized that they can make as much money as they possibly want off of Fate Grand Order, and so that's the only thing they've put out with an official English release.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's like they can make the money that they would make would not recoup the localization costs. Most likely, it'd be a huge gamble, and they're like, we don't need to do this.
Yeah, exactly.
So they don't. Yeah.
You just print that gotcha money instead.
Yeah, I know they get mine.
Well, they do localize, all the anime adaptations and all that. All
That's
that
true.
spin-off,
That's easier to
That's
do though.
easier,
That's a way less time
And risk.
intensive. Like it's just you've got a video already. You can just overlay some subtitles on it.
Yeah,
Piece
especially
of cake,
because that
easy.
stuff coming out is new, right? Like Fate is an old visual novel. A lot of people who have been in the community for a while have read it, and I suspect that if Type Moon were to announce that, hey guys, we're translating Fate Stay Night, like tomorrow it's coming out, I have a feeling that most people who had read it wouldn't go back and purchase it after the fact.
Yeah, I mean, I would, but I might be an exception in that case because Fate is still to this day my favorite VN. So, like, I certainly would. Like, I would probably throw every bit of spare cash I had at it just because I want to support it. But that's not the average.
Yeah, I don't think that's representative at all.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is unfortunate, but
yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, I was gonna say that kind of relates to like a different point of another different case of like, okay, let's say there wasn't a official translation, and let's say it was hard or expensive to get through like a Japanese site or whatever, and it had a fan translation at first, but like, and it had a fan translation for like, let's say 3 to 5 years. Then what if suddenly someone officially translated it, and they either, whether there was a Kickstarter or not, like would it be like there's, we were just saying like depending on the series, people may not buy it even though they read it again. But I mean, I'm sure like with cases like the Muv-Luv series, that one was well liked enough where I like to think a bunch of people who read it before did buy it, but I can't say for sure.
Yeah, I mean, well, I certainly did. I know people who bought it on the Reputation, who like backed the Kickstarter on Reputation, or then bought it later on Reputation. But like for me, as soon as they came out with that Kickstarter, I was like, I absolutely have to put some money behind this. I loved Muv-Luv Alternative when I read it, and the whole series really, like not just Alternative. I loved all of the trilogy, and I was like, well, I absolutely have to support this because I mean, obviously it was. I read it before it was localized, so imagine how I got it.
Did you fly to Japan, buy a physical copy, and then bring it back with you?
I did. How did you know? I went there just for Muv-Luv Alternative. I was like, I've heard so many good things about the Muv-Luv series. I'm gonna go buy Muv-Luv and Alternative, and I'm gonna come right back. It was a very expensive day trip, but in all seriousness, like it's. A lot of people who backed that had read it, and also people who were kind of the people who are like, I don't want to pirate anything, but I've heard really good things about this. I want this to happen because I want to read this because I've heard so many things about it. And so it was probably a split on things like Muv-Luv, the kind of people who ended up backing it. Um,
Which I think it can go either way, though, too. I mean, the
mhm.
level of Kickstarter has been delayed on a lot of things about it, but at
Yeah.
least they're not light and the DS Kickstarter, because that's something where, even though I like the material they put out, this is one of those things that's a pain, is that I love the material they put out. I would love to read more visual novels from light and in that in because there's other things that exist kind of in tangentially in that series. I'd love to read more of those. I'm never giving that company another cent, and it's
Yeah.
solely because of how they managed their the Kickstarter, and not based on the content that they put out, which is just such a shame. That again,
Hmm.
it's one more obnoxious thing that even if like people do give you legal translations, sometimes they just really fuck it up and still make it unnecessarily hard.
Yeah. I've heard that sentiment a lot about that particular release. It's like, man, I loved Dias Irae. It was so great. One of the best things I've ever read. I do not want to give Light another
Oh man, I
penny.
went back after the
Like,
Kickstarter was
yeah,
over and like threw some more money at them because the soundtrack was so good to buy a copy of the soundtrack when it came out.
right,
And then
yep.
they're like, by the way, digital soundtrack, due to limitations, you're only getting a couple of like 2 discs for it. It's selected number of tracks. I'm like, it's a digital distribution. What limits are there? You can give us as many fucking files as you want. How did like? It's just ridiculous. It's just every opportunity they fucked something up, and it's such a shame because the fact is that they're not going to be getting my money, not because I'm going to be pirating their stuff, but because I refuse to support them on principle now because
Hmm.
of how badly they manage this.
Yeah, it's really a shame that. I mean, it's a good thing in a way that we have somebody who has done enough things wrong to be kind of like the hey, look at what happened over here. This is what you should not do
Well,
when
I think we have
localizing
a
a
lot of
VN.
those. I think we have a
Oh,
lot of those.
it is. But I mean, what Light has done is kind of one of the biggest one in recent memory. And but it's really a shame that it was something as big name as Dias Irae,
Yeah.
because so many people like that. I mean, we've talked about it in the past, like how big of a deal be it Dias getting translated even was. So it's really a shame that of all the VNs to be kind of like the poster child for how to fuck it up, it had to be Diaz.
Yeah, because I think this the ties into kind of the Gabe Newell Steam method of combating piracy, which is basically that if you make it easy for people to give you money for the products that they want, they'll do it. If they really care about DSRI and it's like a simple, you go here, you purchase it, you're done, people will
Mm-hmm.
do that. If you make it be difficult and you fuck up the soundtrack and you have this weird 2 editions to download, 2 copies of the game with no patch, and all this bullshit. People are gonna make this sounds like way too much work. Why should I deal with any of this? I'm just gonna pirate the game where I can just get a simple, easy version that doesn't cost me any money.
All right, yeah, I think we've talked about enough about when or if we should when piracy could be done. So I want to get into this next topic. How much does piracy affect the market, like in a positive or negative way? What do you guys think?
Um, so I think VNs are in a weird state for that one, more so than many other media. Um, and I mean maybe this is just my perception from looking at the community, but I mean it's a much smaller community, so I feel like people that choose to take that route can have a larger effect. But I also think VNs are in a weird spot where the value that people assume VNs have relative to the price tags they tend to get has a bit of a mismatch.
Oh
I
yeah, for
continually see
sure.
people coming into the community or asking questions like, "Oh hey, I'm looking for a new VN that's romance oriented." And people are like, "Oh, try Grisaya. It's great. It's on Steam. You can get it." And they're like, "Oh, $50 for a VN though."
Oh my god, I've read so many
And it's
times.
like, yeah, I mean, yes, you can tell them, well, it's like 60 hours of content and all this stuff, but people look at it and I think people tend to associate it more with the level of what does a novel cost or what does like a movie cost compared to a
Mm-hmm.
game, and so I think it's discouraging to see just how expensive they are as well relative to what the perceived price should be.
For the record, Grisaya is only $40 on Steam
Oh,
right
excuse
now, not
me.
$50.
If you want a $50 VN, it's Clannad, which actually
Yeah, has Clannad actually not had a price drop yet?
it might have probably got a
I
discount
think
like
it's been
during
on
normal
sale
sales,
for.
but
I think it was. I think I bought it like at 10% off when it first came out for like a sale. I think it's been on sale since, but it is still an
It's
expensive
still
visual
base
novel.
price.
It's
Base
a
price is still $50 for Clannad.
it's
Just looked it up.
a long VN, but it's still expensive.
It
Like
is.
I don't regret the $50 I spent on it because I think I got like 54,
Mhm.
55 hours out of it. And, like that's actually a pretty good metric.
mhm.
But I think
Mhm.
that for it's not like a game, right? There's no gameplay. It's just some fucking images and text. Why is that $50, right? Like I think if you look at like what a VN is composed of, especially
Mhm.
from people that are newer to the community, you will see people having a disconnect between how much they think a VN should cost and how much it actually
Yeah.
does.
For me, and I might be kind of an exception to this. I'm very kind of there's two ways to look at kind of valuing your dollar when it comes to entertainment. Um, and it's either very simply quality or quantity. And VNs to a lot of people are definitely more quantity than quality, because you and I, Rallina, were talking about this a little bit before we started recording. Someone who sits down and plays a game that costs $50 and maybe only gets 20 hours worth of content out of it, and be like, man, that was a really fun, amazing 20 hours, start to finish.
Yeah.
That was great, fantastic. Whereas someone spends $50 on a VN, they might get 60 hours worth of content out of it, but a lot of VNs suffer from pacing issues, or there's lulls in it where it's like, well, we're just kind of doing character development right now, which is interesting, but it's not as engaging as that really amazing climax that's coming at the end. So it's very much VNs very much are as far as like your the value of your dollar or whatever your currency is, a quantity per hour of your time rather than a every hour. Like you have more hours that you're spending on it, but fewer of those hours are good
I absolutely
in
agree
most
with
cases.
that.
Yeah, which sounds terrible to say, actually.
No,
Like,
but no,
I felt
you're not
really
wrong.
bad saying that sentence.
If I were to look at the 40 hours I spent on Dark Souls 3 and compare that to the 40 hours I spent on Little Busters, one of those two is worth a lot more to me.
It's Little Busters, right?
Well, I'm just saying that I paid $0 for Little Busters because I read it before they had an official release, and it was still too much money.
I see.
Another factor that I don't know how many people actually do this, but there's also the possibility that that people don't read every single route if it's a route based visual novel. Like they might be like, okay, I like Clannad, I liked Kotami, and I liked say Kyo, but I don't really care about the other ones, so I'll just read theirs, and like I'm bored now, so I'll just I feel like I wasted $50.
Clannad is a
example,
hilariously
yeah, exactly.
Clannad is a hilariously bad example for that, because you literally can't finish it. But if somebody does that though, yeah.
They chose Nagisa as the canon heroine there, and if you're like, actually she's not that interesting, well, like go fuck yourself. It's all after story is all her all the time, and it's like, man.
That's kind of how I felt about Nagisa personally. I was not really big on Nagisa.
I don't want to dive into the romance quality topic here, but I think that is definitely a point where it's, especially with. That is, I think, a good segue, though, for the route-based ones. If you like certain characters and don't like other characters, how much you enjoy different parts of the VN is gonna be weighted differently. Like, you're gonna especially because usually when they have heroine routes, they're catering to certain audiences when they write them.
Definitely.
Which means that for the routes that you're not the target audience for, you're just sitting there twiddling your thumbs like, well, I have to read this to get the true ending, but man, I do not like this fucking tsundere over here.
Oh, and even if there's no true ending, I mean, it's like, say, like you're playing something and you're going along and you've got 4 heroines and you've got, like, maybe you are for some reason averse to the childhood friend character type, and you're just like, I don't want to read her out. Period. Just done. That's that's content that you're not going to consume.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, whereas with some other media, maybe if you were playing a game, you're probably going to do the whole thing, or at least all of the main storyline.
Yeah,
So
I
yeah,
think
it's
optional content in games often feels less optional than it does in VNs. Like
yeah.
missing out on a route versus not doing some side quests. At least in my mind, it's like, yeah, sure, I finished the whatever game and didn't do all the side quests, but it's like, oh, I read a VN and didn't finish one of the routes is something that I have never said or done. Um,
I've actually done that. I have not finished a route in a grand total of one VN I've read.
I mean, I guess technically I held skip through some of the Chaos Child routes, but I did the content did flash on the screen in front of my eyes, and I skimmed some of the text.
So you got the gist of it,
I
right?
got the gist of it. To be fair, I actually did get the gist of it, and I'm glad I didn't read those routes.
Okay.
Um, Other topics on piracy in the market. I just wanted to see what you guys were thinking about the idea that a lot of people get introduced to VNs as a medium
Yeah.
where piracy is very common because of the accessibility issues, and how you think that affects how people interact with the market even
So
after
it's
official
interesting
translations
to
come out.
me in a way because when I started reading VNs, really was right when we kind of started getting into this period of increased localizations that we're seeing right now. And when I was starting, it was like I think I was starting when the Clannad Kickstarter was wrapping up. Maybe it was a little before then. I don't remember. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
about the same for
so
me
it was
actually.
kind of like pirating these things is just what you do. Like that's the option unless you want to spend hundreds of dollars like we talked about already. Um and to an extent, like I think like you were saying, like how does it affect the market? It goes both ways on it. Because things like the massive success that the Muv-Luv Kickstarter had would not have been possible if so many people hadn't pirated and read the Muv-Luv series before that Kickstarter happened. Like, so in a way, piracy has been kind of instrumental in bringing the scene to where it is now. If it wasn't so prevalent, we probably wouldn't be sitting here talking about
Yeah.
upcoming localizations or anything like that. Like we'd still be talking about like, oh, there's a fan translation of X coming out soon, and that's cool.
Mahotsukai never.
Yeah, all of those projects have been dead for a while. It seems like, which
Oh, it's a
better
common
learn
thing
Japanese. Yeah.
I guess it's the I think it's the same point you're getting at, right? Like there's
Mhm.
a lot of fan projects are dying, and
Yep.
you get more official ones get picked up. I mean,
Mhm.
that wasn't one. Mahotsukai is not one that got like shut down, but for example, like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Angel Beats project did
Right,
get shut
yeah.
down because
Angel
they're
Beats
like,
project
hey, we're
did
gonna
get shut down.
translate this. Yes, and I'm sorry, I know this is old wounds for you, but
Yeah.
But yeah, so like it's a really piracy is actually a really interesting thing for me to think about with VNs because it was in a way instrumental to bringing us to today. But at the same time, it's something that it feels to me at least kind of like a relic of the former age of English reading visual novels, where we should probably transition into buying all of our stuff now. But a lot of people haven't made that transition, from what I've seen, at least. Not to like call out the community or anything, but like I still see a lot of people doing it.
Yeah, like I've been reading visual novels since 2010, and that was definitely the age where it was like really rare to find, to buy stuff legally. So I guess in that time period, it did, like you said, it probably made at least a bit more sense, like to buy stuff. So like a lot of the first VNs I read were like Fate Stay Night, which never had a localization, or Sonic Ring, which only recently got like a localization out of nowhere, or Shara no Kuni, which just got a Kickstarter like a year ago. So it
got 2 Kickstarters actually.
All right, well, yeah, like we'll pretend the first one doesn't exist, but
The
yeah.
VN's so nice they translated it twice.
Well, to be fair, the first one ended before it could be sexual. But anyways, I can see, like I've known a lot of people like online that I think it's just like a culture thing. Like it's just like, okay, well, since fan translations and are the only way to read visual novels at this point in time, as opposed to like the few that have official releases like Ever 17, which is expensive as fuck. Then
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of just the culture has kind of just been, well, yeah, let's just use fan translate and you pirate it, and because it's not like, say video games, where it's just it's easy to just go to like a store to buy one, or go like on your PC or Steam to buy it. You kind of have to pirate it if you like want a legit easy, well, not too hard way to get it if you don't want to go with like a
Yeah.
sale. But
It
no one was spreading around ways to buy stuff from Japan or whatever back then. It was all literally just the culture was, yeah, you just read fan translation, pirate it, and that was it.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, you mentioned Ever 17 as a prohibitively expensive thing, which I said earlier too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there is actually a download edition of Ever 17 on Makino Drive,
Huh.
for a grand total of 1,480 yen.
Yeah, that's super
But
fucking
it's the
cheap, actually.
Japanese version. It's so little money. I checked it just before. If for anyone who doesn't know, conversion rates right now, that is $13.44 USD. Um, but that's still the Japanese version, which, unless you know Japanese, you can't play. Yes, you bought the game, but since it was an official release, there's no patch. So it's like you just gotta pirate it. Is like the way you can read it.
All right, so we've talked a bit about how piracy could positively or negatively affect the market, but now I want to talk about ways that like we as the VN community could, or maybe other companies could, control or prevent piracy for visual novels. What do you guys think?
Personally, I think attempting to use DRM or whatever other solution is basically a technology solution to a people problem. As I mentioned earlier, I like the Gabe Newell approach of, if you make it easy for people to buy stuff and give them decent service, they will pay you money for for the stuff. It's the whole point of what Steam is founded on, right? Um,
Yeah.
I think if it's easy to get your hands on VNs, people are going to buy them much more willingly than if it is a huge fucking pain to go buy a VN, which is the case for many VNs right now.
So as far as you mentioned DRM there, as far as DRM is concerned, like it's useful for some things, but I feel like from my own experience watching the VN community, anything that gets released nowadays that has DRM has a crack within 24 hours.
Hmm.
So it's just like, sure, it's there, but it doesn't effectively do anything. So while it seems kind of like a solution to the problem, the people who really want to get into what they're gonna to play is they're gonna get there anyway. And the thing is, the way that Japanese companies at least are doing DRM is more of a, and it makes sense because this is kind of the way that the medium is built over there, is that you are supposed to only consume most of these things in Japan. So many of these have a splash screen when you start up. It's like Japan sales only, da 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 da, only play in Japan, all this stuff. But there's so many ways to get around that, and buying it isn't actually going to circumvent that DRM. So it kind of, in a way, doesn't do anything for the people who are pirating it outside of Japan. And the people who are pirating it in Japan are really on thin ice because they really cracked down on that over there.
Hmm.
So it's weird. Like, DRM is a solution ideally, but it in practice doesn't work for VNs, I don't think. What Rallina is saying though about make it accessible, 100%. Like, that's the biggest thing I think that could help VNs be consumed legally, if you will.
And I think we're moving towards that, but again,
We are, absolutely. I really think we are. But we're not there yet. But
yeah,
we're working on it.
my general assessment of like the status of the VN market is like it's not so much a money issue as it is the translation availability issue.
Yeah, and that I would agree with that sometimes, because you have some people who who are reading VNs, I mean, you got it's crazy. I mean, when I started reading VNs, I had this perception of perhaps what the average person who consumes VNs is, like, what kind of demographic they fit to. And of course, being a selfish and self-centered person, I thought, oh, they must all be generally like me, which is sort of correct, but also not, because I'm 30. And
You're a real fucking old man around these parts.
sometimes, yeah, like I really am, compared to, like, because I know people who read a lot of VNs who were 18.
Yeah.
Everyone is at least 18. Remember, guys, everyone is 18 years or older. That's how it goes. Anyway, but yeah, it's some of those some people just don't have access to the resources to actually obtain them, right now, at least.
It doesn't help too.
I guess is where I was going with that.
Most DRM is just like a lot of it's just like fucking hilariously laughable when it comes out. Like they'll be like all in Japanese, like answer this basic math question, or the DS era, like you can only access the 18 plus version of the game after you've finished one route in the all ages version. Like what? Why?
Yeah. My favorite very easy to circumvent Japanese DRM is that your machine has to be running on Japanese time.
Oh yeah, or just system locale. Like my machine's been in Japanese system locale for that's not,
since I began reading VNs. It's been in Japanese locale.
Yeah, exactly.
And the funny thing is, like, you don't even notice it. Like, there's a couple things I install and I don't pay attention to what I'm installing. You're like, oh, all the screens about this came up in Japanese instead. Okay, sure. But yeah, it's like those are the kinds of the DRM you see, and it's like not actually effective for this particular medium. Some other media it probably would be, but this one not so much. But as far as preventing piracy going forward, I don't feel like, Ange, you mentioned starting up here, anything we can do as a community.
Yeah.
And I don't really know if there's anything we can do as the community, because people who are going to pirate are going to pirate.
Mm-hmm.
You can try to shame them or what have you, and
yeah,
because I've seen it happen.
Yeah, me too.
But it's not going to change anyone's opinion on doing it. If they're going to do it, they're going to do it. I mean, people want to spend their free time the way they want to spend their free time. So if they're going to get this thing, no matter how they have to do it. But and those are not the people, like, people who have talked about piracy and what it means to the medium. Like, I want to say even in like you brought up Gabe Newell's Rallina, Gabe Newell's stance on piracy is like, make it easy for them to obtain and they will get it. Like, there are still also people who are just, no matter what, gonna pirate.
Oh yeah. But I think
that's something that most people acknowledge.
Right?
Exactly. Like, those are essentially not lost sales, because there was never going to be a sale in the first place. It's not to go off like waxing poetic about piracy and what it means and all this stuff, but like, there are certain people that you're just not going to get their money, period, and they're going to consume your games, and it's not always necessarily a bad thing, because like a pirated game is not necessarily, there's a lot of people who say like piracy, it's stealing, but no, it's not. And it's like this weird gray area on that, because like you're not actually taking anything, you're taking a copy of something, and it's like, if you were never actually going to get that money in the first place, is it really a lost sale? And the thing is, like, I personally never would have put as much money into the Muv-Luv trilogy, not just alternative, Kickstarter, if I had not pirated that game first. And that made far more money than I thought I would ever drop on something like that, because I pirated it first. Like, I never would have put that kind of money down on word of mouth.
Yeah.
Personally. And so, like, it's really weird, because it's like, controlling and preventing piracy, I think, is something that we should strive towards. But at the same time, like, it has its benefits, which is why I really am so conflicted about piracy in the medium sometimes, because it for VNs at least, it really goes both ways in a big way. Unlike like AAA video games, like if you get like 10% of your people who pirate it, like probably is not going to hurt those people that much. Yeah, they're not going to make as much of a profit, but those companies sell so many copies of their games, they recoup their costs. VNs, you don't see that quite as much. We've mentioned before, like there are some companies in Japan that they literally have to have a success in their next game to stay afloat. So like not getting a sale is a big deal for them. But like someone not buy, like if someone pirates it instead of buys it and they never would have bought it, that can generate more visibility for something if they really liked it, for example, and could inspire other people to buy it. It's a really bizarre dichotomy for me to try to justify in my mind, because I'm like, I shouldn't think of this as a quote unquote good thing, supposedly, but in a way it kind of can be, but it's also not. You know what I mean? It's very weird.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't like you said, I don't want to like talk about morality and bull crap, because that's not what this podcast is all about. We're here to talk about visual novels, not how good or bad a person is for not buying.
Right? Yeah,
buying
exactly.
I mean, I just want you to know that I think you're both bad people, so that's why I usually am just like, you know what, there's nothing to be gained here from this conversation.
Okay, that's fair, I
so
guess.
I mean, aren't we all terrible people, right? I feel like we all are, right? Are you really gonna try to play the moral high ground right now? Ryan?
I mean, I can
Are you
try
really
to.
gonna go there for me?
After last episode, I feel like I get to play the moral high ground card forever now.
I'm sure you do.
All right, well, I think we've covered all we wanted to talk about related to piracy and the visual novel community. So now let's get into visual novel news. It's been a while, so we have probably about a month and a half worth of news. So it's gonna be quite a lot.
Yeah.
So the first thing I have on my list is Umaneku Golden Fantasia was recently released on Steam. I know there were some weird netcode issues at first, but they got patched eventually because Mongaver's cool like that. I played a little bit of it, but there's been other games I've wanted to prioritize more, so I didn't get to like play a lot of it.
For context, for anyone who's not aware, that is an Umineko fighting game spinoff. It is one of the last things I expected to see get an official release on Steam.
Yeah,
I was like,
really?
I was
No
like, wait,
joke.
hold on. The random ass fucking tag team Umineko fighters on Steam now. Cool.
I mean, I wasn't expecting Melty Blood to get a release on Steam, and then it just appeared one day.
I mean, Melty Blood had a real community behind it. Like, there are people
did,
that
yeah.
still played Melty Blood. I don't know
Yeah.
that anyone plays Umineko Golden Fantasia aside from Umineko fans.
Yeah, that's true. I can think of one person I know who plays Umineko Golden Fantasia.
I know two, and they're both massive Umineko fanboys.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I know there's a Golden Fantasia Discord, but I'm not really in it, and I don't know how many people actually play there, so who knows. Let's see.
But that's cool. Yeah.
So Soul Press recently did a Kickstarter for this visual novel called Newton and the Apple Tree, and it apparently did pretty darn well. Got 200% funded. It had I think one of the things that probably helped it get so popular, besides maybe the art or the setting, was it had an 18+ demo, and I don't know how many Kickstarters really do that, so I think that might have helped. So maybe that could be.
I've not. So talking about demos on Kickstarter, several months back, I was like all about checking out Kickstarters on demo, like Kickstarter demos, and it was mostly for English releases, like English originals. Yeah. Not that, and a lot of those are not 18+. But even on those, and from what I've seen from demos a lot of translations don't even get a demo at release. And so, like, having a demo for, which it did have a demo. The English release did have a demo, right? The Kickstarter?
Yes, it did.
It was an English release demo?
Within, like, the same... Oh, wait, for which one?
For Newton and the Apple Tree.
Yeah, it was released, like, within the first few days of when it...
Yeah, right. That's unusual in and of itself. Like, having a translation get the demo translated for the Kickstarter is unusual. Like, that doesn't normally happen. And having it be 18 plus too for people who are into 18 plus content like myself, yeah, I heard you. Yeah. That's cool. You like you want to see that sometimes. Like, you want to be like, well, what am I getting with everything? Like, you can get sort of an idea of the story in the demo, and then you can also get an idea about how the adult content is, and it's like that tells you everything.
I have so many things to say. I'm just gonna leave it.
That's okay. We don't need to go off on that
Yeah,
again.
we talked about that last episode, so
We don't need to do that 2 episodes in a row.
I mean, we could pad this episode's length out by, let me tell you why you're wrong about 18 plus content.
We already did that.
Moving right along.
Yeah,
moving right.
but that's really interesting.
No, that is cool. Like, it's plus I would view it less as like a see everything. I would assume that the companies that are putting out this kind of stuff would probably see that as a risk if they're giving out the good stuff, I say in quotes, for free rather than making you pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but the thing is, it's like you give them a little tease. It's like, here's some of the good stuff, and there's more coming when you buy the retail version.
Yep. I checked out a bit of the demo, both like the 18 plus side and the non 18 plus side, which is
Of course you did.
Of course, it wouldn't be me. But yeah, I mean, I gotta admit, the demo did actually get me interested in supporting it. I just paid enough just to get a copy through whatever method they're releasing it. I don't even know what it is.
I did hear that from people who read the Japanese version of it, that it was kind of underwhelming, but like kind of as a whole, but at the same time, like, I mean, it looks interesting. It looks cute. There is some there is one very amusing H scene that I will not divulge here.
Yeah, let's not talk about it.
But yeah, it seems I would be interested in checking it out, at least personally. So,
all right, cool. Moving on from that, one of the big controversies in recent visual novel history is how Dies Irae and Light was dealt with the 18 plus quote unquote patch release. So the original promise was, okay, if you supported the Kickstarter, there's going to be an 18 plus patch. So, after like some time after they released the all ages version, and it took for a while there was like no news on it, but then eventually they were like, oh wait, sorry guys, the patch, we can't really like do a patch because there's apparently the original Japanese release was 18 plus and the original one released was like a completely different version. So what we have to do is there's a patch exe file that they gave out to people. What it essentially did was it created an exe file for Octa Est Fabula, which creates a new folder which has an exe file. But the catch was originally it could only be accessed if you had to read at least one route in the all ages version, and since it was Octa Est Fabula, like the original version, there were none of the short stories or the second I believe it was Rhea's second route ending or something.
It's just so what you're missing, there's a number of side stories in Dies Irae that are all like, one, they're very good, two, they're very plot relevant. So I think it's 5 side stories, the epilogue to Marie's route, the epilogue to Rhea's route, and the second ending to Rhea's route are not included in the 18 plus version, which is in my mind a pretty significant loss, honestly.
Yeah, it from my understanding is it's like the whole definitive version of DS that we were talking about last episode doesn't exist.
Yeah, it doesn't happen. It didn't. The dream is dead, and more reasons why I'm upset with Light.
And it's like it's essentially a completely second copy of the game to view your 18 plus content.
But they're still calling it a patch.
Yeah, they're still calling it a patch.
Of course.
It's super weird.
Yeah, and I know, like, very shortly after, they kind of I think they attempted to redact the whole thing where you had to do the common route first, but, people still didn't fix anything. People were still upset about, like, how it was handled. Yeah. I mean, they tried apologizing and all that stuff, but I think the damage is pretty heavily done by now, so...
Yeah, it's been a really disappointing thing to follow, honestly. Like, I kind of talked about it a little bit earlier. It's just like... It's really a shame, like, the way that the DS Kickstarter, everything around it has progressed. Yeah.
Well, yeah, like I'm kind of reading DS a little slowly now, and pretty much the only way to like read literally everything that's available is like I would have to read
Yeah,
like
you have to like read both versions in
in
tandem,
tandem.
pretty
I mean,
much, right?
I don't
Yeah.
mind doing it because I'm a weird guy that likes tech weird stuff like that. But the average person would be like, man, this is fucking stupid. It should just all be put together, which it
Yeah,
honestly should. But whatever. What can you do?
and I I don't I'm not gonna get into spoilers and this stuff, but like guys, like the sex scenes, they're not good. And this is not just me being like the prude, like, and not even like not good, like badly written. Like there's some weird shit in there that like you don't need it. You
No,
really
Rallina. We talked about this last time. I want to see
don't
the
need
weird
it.
shit.
Okay,
I want to see the weird shit.
if you want to go see the weird shit, then go read the fucking 18 plus version of DS Era and miss out on the excellent content that exists in the in all ages edition. Because
But I also want the excellent content. I want the weird shit and the excellent content.
you know,
Can't
well,
you give me both?
I know.
Why can't you give me both? Why can't you give me
Welcome
both
to the
live?
fucking DS Era Kickstarter. You should just honest again. I'm not biased at all, but if I had to pick one of the two, I would pick the emotionally satisfying epilogue and second ending that makes way more sense to the storyline. But that's just me.
I'm not surprised, and to be perfectly frank, I think probably most people would, given the option between the two. Anyway.
Yeah, but you know the controversy doesn't end there. So, Sekai Project, actually around the same exact day, they released the first Clockwork Leyline and Hoshizora no Memoria, which both got kickstarted. I want to say like almost half a year ago now. However, both releases are plagued with issues such as untranslated lines, putting random symbols within the text, line breaks that weren't they're just text just put in a new line for some reason, and I guess they're given that the way the engine worked, I guess saves got deleted if the game got updated in some way, and that got some people angry. It wasn't as controversial as the DS era thing, but it was still pretty controversial to the point where Sekai actually officially apologized for the Hoshimemo release, and they're probably gonna fix it, but no news has come from that just yet.
So I can't speak on the Hoshimemo one because I haven't really followed much of that at all. But I was a major proponent because I've read the first ley line and I'm most of the way through the second ley line right now. And I was a big proponent of people being like, "Hey, yeah, you should get this. It's good. I liked it a lot. Like, it's not amazing, but it's really fun. So you should get it. You should read it. You should support this." I was so disappointed when that release came out because of all the problems that were plaguing it, and it sounded like it was. I remember I was kind of looking at things, and it's like there were lines that were displayed untranslated in Leyline, but there was a translation for those lines. But for whatever reason, the way the engine was coded just did not grab the translation because it was just really weird. Like there's the whole thing about the interplay between the way that it worked in the Japanese locale and now trying to move it over to English locale, which was a whole other thing that plagued that particular release. Because the initial release of Leyline, it's like, well, what we're going to do is we're going to have you run this version of it that essentially is running a program to emulate Japanese locale because we couldn't make it work otherwise. And it was just really bizarre. Like, and part of it, I don't want to put the blame totally on Sekai Project, to be perfectly honest. Like, I know a lot of people want to because a lot of people like to bash on Sekai Project. But I don't want to put the blame completely on them because the way it was originally coded was 100% taking advantage of the way that things coded in Japanese locale work. There are certain things you can do that you can't do in the English locale because, like, I remember someone was talking about there's certain characters that like you can safely use in coding Japanese locale that if you do in the standard English one just totally breaks everything. And I wish I remembered because I would love to actually give you an example right now, but I cannot remember what it was. But there were some. I remember there was a certain localization, and this is getting really ambiguous because I can't remember details at the moment because I wasn't planning on mentioning this. But they had to go through the entire script and replace like something basic, like God, God, it was something that just doesn't get used. It was a character that just plain doesn't get used. It might have been something like the English comma, which is different from the Japanese comma.
Hmm.
In the script, they had to replace all of those because the English comma was being used, and this might be wrong, but it's the same idea. It was being used as something to call in the coding, but when they made it the English script, it just broke everything. And so it's difficult to do these localizations. There are a lot of issues sometimes that arise depending on the way the original one was coded. So like I can't completely fault them, but at the same time it's like whatever was causing it probably should have been something you should have noticed and picked up.
Or at the very least, like give a little message, like say, "Hey, we knew
Yeah.
it's a known issue, and we're sorry. We'll try to figure out a way, like maybe with a patch or something." But
Mm-hmm.
oh well, that's
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully, I mean, I haven't like I do plan on reading the first ley line eventually, and I have read Hosh Memo before, so
Mm-hmm.
and I might check those out eventually. Hopefully,
Yeah.
the issues aren't too like game like
Yeah.
immersion breaking or whatever. But whatever.
I mean, to go back, I've had a lot of fun with the Leyline series so far. Like I say, I'm only halfway through the entire trilogy right now, but it's been a lot of fun, so I think people should read it.
Cool.
But
Another interesting thing related to a popular visual novel. So there was a Kickstarter post that said that Muv-Luv was gonna be moved from the rights would be passed on from Dejika to IXTL, and then shortly after, like maybe a month after, they actually removed all both Muv-Luv and Alternative from Steam, and I think that's part of the moving process, and they said that they both would be back on Steam in February with new app IDs, but it's kind of causing some grief to people because they want to read it and like I don't know if like what this new release with this new app ID is going to cause, like with the Muv-Luv series. Is it gonna mess up anything? We don't know. Um, the 18 plus version of Grisaya no Rakuen, or Eden of Grisaya, finally released after God, was it like almost a year since
it was a long time.
So
It was
fucking long.
pretty darn long time. People are happy. I mean, I've seen different opinions on how it turned out, and I don't know. I mean, it released, so if you're interested in the Grisaya trilogy, you can finally read the whole thing as it was originally released in Japan. Um, the last thing I want to bring up news related is there's another new licensed company called Neko Neon. They announced that they got 5 moeges. I'm not going to list them off right now. I can post them later. And they want to release them by 28. Like most of them are gonna release in 2018, and one's gonna release in 2019. But the main thing is they really want to be anti Kickstarter. Like they're gonna just go straight into I guess kind of fan translation style or old release style. Where they just release the visual novel on their Neko Neon site. And I guess one notable thing about the company, it was started by Akiro, who's a member of the Fu novel community and helped translate Saku Saku and Hoshi Memo. So I'm interested to see if this non Kickstarter approach is going to help them, especially since they got 5 visual novels right off the bat.
Yeah, this was actually the fact that it's not going to be centered on Kickstarter was really interesting to me, because so many times nowadays you see a new translation's coming around, so we're going to kickstart it. And I mean, we talked about the pros and cons of Kickstarter in the past, but I think there's a lot of people out there who are kind of suffering from Kickstarter fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're just tired of seeing Kickstarters for new things coming out. Like, I mean, I am too, to an extent. And it was like, oh yeah, cool, the new localization is on Kickstarter. And I'm just like, this is just normal now. And it doesn't have to be that way. So I'm excited to see if this pans out for them. I really am. And I hope it can, because it's possible. Like, you see you see a lot of the smaller localization companies and like Sekai Project, kickstarts almost everything, and then you have people who don't kickstart anything. Like Manga Gamer doesn't kickstart anything. Jast doesn't kickstart anything. Um, and they both have their separate, entirely separate, very different reasons for not kickstarting anything. But I think it's admirable to not need to seek crowdfunding. Not to say it's wrong to seek crowdfunding, because if that's what you got to do, that's what you got to do. I would rather see things get released than things not get released, personally. Um, but I think it's good because I mean, there's only so many people out there who read VNs that are willing to throw money at Kickstarters. So something more things that can function without kickstarting is good.
Yeah,
In my eyes.
it does seem like they. I think in a post they made it was almost they're doing this almost specifically because it feels like they're kind of tired of the Kickstarter thing, and they're like trying to like provide a different. From what I remember, but I could be wrong. But
Yeah. I remember seeing the announcement. I honestly didn't look into what they were saying too much other than I was like, yeah, that's cool. I hope that works out for you guys. I really do, because I mean, this whole episode has been about piracy, and especially on English releases, it's really easy to pirate English releases if you know where you're going. Like, so it can really easily not work out for them, and I really hope that's not the case for them. I really hope that people follow the whole like, hey, we released this, so please support us by spending money on it, um, so that they can keep releasing more things. I really hope that's the future that they have.
yeah, I hope so too. That's about it for news. And now we are in the Shill segment where a user can show their favorite visual novel for a few minutes. But unfortunately, we don't have one at the moment, so I'm just.
You know what, Ange? Fuck you. This week, fuck your shill, Ange. I'm shilling. I'm going to talk about The House in Fata Morgana and why you should give it a read. Let us talk about one of the best visual novels out there, shall we? Okay, just kidding. I'm not actually going to pull a Martin here. I've already shilled this visual novel once without saying anything about it. When we first started the podcast, I wanted to shill The House in Fata Morgana, but I wasn't prepared to do so in a way that wouldn't include spoilers off the top of my head during recording. Thankfully, after months of constant pressure on Knack and Ange, I'm finally being given a second chance to talk about one of my favorite visual novels, The House in Fata Morgana. So, first up then, who is this visual novel for? If you're looking for a high school setting, heroine routes, or a lot of action, you might want to steer clear of this one. I would encourage everyone at least to give it a try, as it is a very interesting and unique experience, but I want to help at least shape your expectations. The House in Fata Morgana is, at its core, a journey of self-discovery. The visual novel opens with the main character arriving at a mysterious mansion having lost their memories. They are greeted by a maid, who offers to show them stories of the mansion's past in an attempt to see if they can find themselves among the previous residents. Each tale spins a heart-wrenching yet very human tragedy set in a different era and with a different cast. Each time we see through the eyes of someone new, but with our external perspective we can notice that across the tales a pattern begins to emerge. The story expertly weaves itself together, culminating in a grand tale of love, loss, gender, identity, abuse, forgiveness, revenge, and redemption. Fata Morgana carries an emotional impact with it that I haven't been able to find in many other visual novels, and it does this primarily through making you care about its characters. They have their vice and virtue in equal measure, and it's very easy to sympathize with them one moment only to detest them the next. However, the visual novel still treats each of them with respect and goes out of its way to demonstrate that even in the depths of their sins, man still has good in him. Of special note as well are the art style and music. The art can seem a little bit off-putting at first, but it is incredibly unique, visually distinctive, and honestly just absolutely gorgeous. The soundtrack is also one of my all-time favorites, with a wide variety of moods and just beautiful instrumentation. They also made the interesting choice to record the numerous vocal tracks in Portuguese, which gave it a very different aesthetic than most other soundtracks. I think after I got the game, I had purchased the soundtrack within 20 minutes of starting it up. I was just blown away. I highly recommend at least giving it a listen. So, Rallina, you ask, where can I find this masterpiece of a visual novel? Well, I will tell you. You can find it for purchase available on both Manga Gamer and Steam, but wait, there's more. The first 2 chapters of the visual novel, a rather significant portion actually, are available for free as a demo. So even if you're not sure, you can get a pretty good taste of what the VN is like without having to pay a dime. It's certainly worth giving a shot, in my opinion, and I hope you all give the house in Fata Morgana a chance. Back to you, Ange.
Wow, Rallina, I don't know how I feel about you saying "fucking me," but that was a very interesting shill about Fata Morgana, and I'm more interested in reading it now.
Don't lie to me like that, Ange. Don't lie, Ange. Not to me.
All right, well, that wraps it up for this episode. For episode 11, we are planning to talk about music in visual novels. And yeah, that's about it for this episode. No guests this time, but hopefully we'll hope to have one that could talk about music with us next time. So anyway, that's it. So I'm Ange Time,
I'm Rallina Tricolor.
And I'm Nakanashi.
and we'll see you guys next episode. Goodbye.